Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Sprueverse, my scale model universe. People of Earth, welcome to what we're referring to as the wrap-up show. This was about an hour Zoom call that Lou Dalmaso and myself conducted just before I had concluded my final assembly on my 1650 Helios D, and Lou had just a little more to do. But we thought it was important to memorialize this build with this call, which I have to say was really important psychologically and also just because when you spend 15 weeks on a project, there's an awful lot to consider. And we thought it would be a really nice idea to share all the nuts and bolts and the nitty gritty of what we went through to build this. Now, a sort of caveat to that is that we were exhausted. I was exhausted. I can't speak for Lou, but I was exhausted. And, so our energy level is a little down. We're not, hey, but I assure you, we thoroughly enjoyed this build. And even though we had some issues, we overcame them, and that's what we do as when we build, right? That's part of the hobby, is you take care of the issues, you struggle through them, you think through them, and it's part of the fun of it too, and it should be. But take a look at this Zoom call and enjoy it. I hope you do, and I'll have some final thoughts at the conclusion of it. It's about 50 minutes for those of you who want to watch the entire thing. For those of you who want to scrub through it, feel free. Take a look. The scene. So here we are. I'm setting the scene because it is November the 30th, and I have just gotten off a plane from Florida. Now, while I was mid-flight at 38,000 feet, I did get to chat with the Aztek Dummy here, and he suggested that we memorialize this build with a post-mortem video to discuss the pros, the cons, the where we are, how we feel. And I thought it was an awesome idea because you do need therapy after 15 weeks. It's actually been 15, maybe closer to 16 for me on this build. This is the Helios 1650 Enterprise D. And so without further ado, I thought we would jump in. Lou, are you finished as of today?
No, I am not finished. I have scant few details to finish. I need to reblend the neck shoulder joint. I need to get the decals from Keith for the pennants for the nacelles, and then I've got to retouch all of those decals that go on the top of the Cobra head. And then other than that, those tiny little bits. I'm about 2 days worth of work from being done.
So I need well, let me get out of the way. So whoa, I need a flat coat on the whole kit and caboodle, and where my Bassard collectors are, I think I'm going to go ahead and follow your lead and get a clear coat of Tamiya red on there, just so that when all the lights are off, it feels like it has a little more energy than it does with just the clear Bassard collectors. And then I'll go ahead and I'm just going to very carefully put in just a little bit of smoke around those edges, just to give it a little aging. So other than that, she is, from my perspective, I mean, put a fork in it. This sucker is as far as I'm going with this. I mean, this is not good enough to take to mine is not good enough to take to Wonderfest, I fear. But
I'm wondering the same thing. I'm thinking that I might like to take it to Wonderfest, but not put it in competition.
Just display it.
Just display it. I don't know if Lee will let me do that or not.
Well, he should.
I mean, I would like to show it off, but there are so many rookie mistakes on it that I don't think it would do well in competition, and
Well,
I'd
I
rather.
don't know if you're up for this, but I have volunteered my services to the Cosmic Scale Model booth.
Ah,
Yes, I want. I'm gonna be a shill and try to sell. Well, I've got plenty I can sell. There'll be Aztek Dummy masks to sell. Maybe not, because Steve is going to be there selling your mask. You might not want Keith
I
selling.
think I think he would be better. Keith would be better served to bring the things that only he has.
I think that's a good call. I had to think about that for a second, but I'm glad I did. But my point is maybe we can get a little pedestal or something, and maybe you want to display it there
That's a thought. That's
at his
certainly a
booth,
thought.
because I'll be there and I can explain to everybody how this is the better version of it, and how and how without your help, and I do mean this sincerely, without your help, this would have not it wouldn't have happened, because I don't even know where I would have begun to start getting someone to help me with with those Aztecs.
Well, that's a good entry point. Let's start talking about I mean, warts and all. Let's talk about the kit as received.
Okay.
The kit as received, not a good kit.
No, great piece of packaging. I mean, it came in one piece. But here's the thing. What I didn't even think about, because I have to tell you, from my perspective, I am years and years behind you in terms of my skill and knowledge. But what I didn't think about was really examining it for what it was, in terms of, could it be warped? Should we dry fit the whole thing, and see where the issues are going to be? I didn't even think about any of that. And if I could go back in time, I would have had that stand built right away, and I would have dry fitted the whole thing onto.
That that brings me to kind of the roundabout way of what I was going to say with talking about the kit as received. Um, Lesson one: do not build this kit without an adequate stand. You've got to have a stand, and you've got to have something that is leagues beefier than what they provided for that armature. Um, that armature, it isn't even a joke. Jokes are funny, and that armature is not even funny.
No, and the mere fact that they just thought that somehow that was going to get attached to the metal plate,
Yeah.
and that was there's no way it would have snapped. The weight of, I mean, there's just no way. It wasn't, they didn't even give us any reinforcement for the saucer to attach to the neck assembly. Nothing.
No, you were expected to use that one bit of resting it on the top of that armature to take all of the weight of the saucer. It just was not well thought out.
No.
I'm not here to beat up Helios, but I will tell you, never, the first lesson I learned from this kit was never buy somebody's initial offering.
Yeah.
They weren't ready for it, wasn't ready for prime time.
No.
From what your experience was with the people that you dealt with, they weren't prepared to make good. The
No.
only thing they ever made good on was replacing the metal plate that was too fat at the outset.
Well, they were kind of forced into that, and they were
I,
also forced into replacing the deflector dish, which
that's true. I forgot the deflector dish was an obvious botch.
yeah.
But yeah, if I have to hear the words, well, it's only version one more time, I think I'll go to Germany and strangle somebody.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it all started, if you can remember, while we're on this subject, and then we can move on. But if you remember, I started getting, so I was so clever to think that the all of the series of holes in the bottom of the nacelle were an alignment. They were
yeah.
wiring, and they were for you to align to your,
Mhm.
with absolutely, no pins or any indicators at all in the pylon to attach. And of course, when I reached out to Daniel when he was not ghosting me, he said, "Oh, that's just an artifact. Ignore it. It's an
Yeah.
artifact from the 6 foot."
The second thing is the lack of instruction.
Zero.
Zero instructions, lack of instructions, lack of, yes, I know I know that's a warp nacelle. I know where it goes. I don't need assembly instructions, but how to assemble is a different
Well,
animal.
yes, but I go back to had they have ever assembled it, which he was honest with me, he never had.
Right.
He never did. The two that he built as commission builds were from test fires. He had them. God knows what he had to do to grind them down or do
Yeah.
whatever he had to do to make those work. Now, he claims he's a professional model maker, but to leave us with, well, to offer a decal set with cheap inkjet decals that I sprayed 3 sets of Bonder on and mine disintegrated. I pity the fool who tried to lay those down, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, that he offered a lighting kit that was also a joke, in my opinion.
Well, now I will tell you that that was, I mean, obviously the soldering of the individual LEDs, that was a non-starter.
Yeah,
But I was surprised at the end of the day, the one thing that didn't let me down was the lighting board.
absolutely.
It worked as advertised.
Yes, it does, and
Now
I will
there
make
was
that caveat.
there was that, nonsense of the alt positive on off, which does absolutely nothing.
No,
There was no reason to even hook a switch up to that because it did
no,
nothing.
no.
The cell warp effect was horrible. And rather than choking down the blue LEDs to like 80% of what they could be all of the time, just to get that flash, they should have had them at 100% and then had an additional string that came on during the warp effect.
Yeah,
If you wanted to add a brighter thing,
yeah.
simple fixes like that. Um, I don't like the fact that my blue LEDs in the nacelles are running at about 80% brightness all of the time. I
Yeah,
want it brighter than that.
yeah.
Uh,
And I ran extras, by the way.
yeah, but I mean, it doesn't matter how many you put in there if
No,
they're only
it's
running at a certain power level.
it's choked at the board.
And that would have been an easy fix.
Yeah,
And I'm not even electronically minded, and I could figure a way to fix that out. Um, I would have liked an individual switch for the impulse engines,
yeah.
so that you can gauge when they're on and when they're off, because they shouldn't be on when the warp engines are on. I mean, they're two separate systems.
No, we could have had a lot more fun with it too. There was an opportunity here. I mean, for the size of the L car we were sent,
Yeah,
which I mean was obnoxious. I mean,
yeah,
sorry.
and the person who thought that was well printed shouldn't be allowed near a press.
No, but they could have done some fun things like had Picard say engage and then had an effect, or they could have had, fire all photon torpedoes or all, whatever. And
There could have been a battle mode where it fired a bunch of times.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, just to give us something to play with. The other thing that I think they could have done is give me a break. They could have had the directional thruster piece built into the saucer. It should have been molded into the saucer. What that we put the decals over for the directional thrusters.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now there's a lot of stuff that they could have done with the design of the parts that they didn't do. They
Yeah,
could have described the lines in, the radial lines in the grade for the saucer.
yeah,
All of the hull section lines could have been engraved. They could have engraved those cargo doors on the bottom of the saucer and on the bottom of the belly. They could have had engravements for those. They could have given us position markers for all of the little phaser strips. They could have given us a position marker for those grates that went over the pylons
Right.
so that you put those in the exact right place where they're
And
supposed to
and
be.
I'm sorry, if you're going to offer a lighting kit for something like this, the idea, I mean, I did try. They gave us a wafer full of addressable SMDs, and I'm
Right.
not even close enough. And I tried, and I was delicate, and there's no way a month of Sundays. I would have. It could have taken me 3 months without exaggeration if I'd have done 6 or 8 a day.
Yeah, that asking the average well, this kit wasn't advertised to the average modeler.
No.
Asking the average modeler to do that was ridiculous. Uh, the fact that you were able to source a light strip that did the same thing tells me that if they had spent 2 minutes on the internet, they could have included that strip in their lighting kit
And should have.
and should have.
Yeah. And the way you came up with that very clever idea to corsetina everything so that it could actually turn the corner was very efficient. And it was a clever way to get that effect in there because I struggled with that, which is why I built those cumbersome light boxes.
Well, that brings us to things we learned while building this thing, and that was one of the things I learned was how simple that ended up being
Yeah.
to do that. And the other thing I learned in the techniques that are products that I'd never used before, and that is that gel,
Yeah.
the UV gel. Now, when you come to things I wish I had done differently, I wish I had waited and used that gel in a secondary hull as well, and never even used that fun recall, the first stuff, the heavier stuff, the gritty stuff. I wish I had never used that. I wish I had done all of it with the frozen gel UV paste.
Yeah, I'm afraid that was me leading you down, the wrong path. It was a moment in time when the frozen gel was not available.
Right.
And so I started experimenting, as I like to do around here. I like to test kitchen things.
Well, I say it's one of those things. It's like it was the best thing I'd ever used until I saw the next best thing.
But I realized something else too is, and I remember the day I was having success with it, I did not have the AC on in the shop. It was 100 degrees here. And
Mhm.
I had gone in for lunch and I came back and I remember the cam was on the desk and the light was pouring through and it was warm to the touch. And
Yeah.
it was very it was not as sort of sandy and as hard to use when
Yeah.
it's in its regular state. So maybe that had something to do with it.
Well, it just well, it's like I said, it was the best stuff I'd ever used until I got a hold of the can of the gel, which for those big windows I wouldn't have used anything else.
Right,
But I
right.
had never used UV putty before, so add that to the arsenal. That's
Yeah,
something else
no,
to
it's a
carry on.
great piece of kit for anybody, at whatever level you're at. Used, like everything else, if it's used effectively, it's a great piece of kit. I just want to go reverse just for a second because I watched your 12 update.
Uh-huh.
And it's funny because well you had some advanced plans. I used the Sternbach blueprints.
Right.
I used this, and I noticed that uh, the windows on our model were just wrong. They were just wrong, and so you couldn't even use those as indicators to where things should line up.
No, you couldn't. And the hull being as thick as it is, which helps us for light blocking, but you got to have your light like right behind the window, or else it's not going to shine out the thickness of that hull.
No,
And anything that was slightly off to an oblique angle meant you weren't going to light your window very well. Which the main problem if with that was in the neck,
yeah.
because you couldn't get down in the neck to block any windows or to really do anything except put a bulb behind it.
No,
It was
exactly.
tough to get in and do light blocking.
Well, and I had a lot of SMDs. I had a lot of SMDs on that. I mean, I had light everywhere, and it is just not coming through. Where I had hoped, you did a better job than me on that cluster of windows on the top of the star drive on the neck, uh, just forward of the shuttle bay, the large shuttle
Yeah.
bay. You've got that cluster of. I would have
Oh
liked
no,
those.
I think that's their arboretum, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it is. I would have loved to have had that lit a little more. Had I have thought about it, I would have put a little box in there. Um,
Yeah.
but one of the things that we obviously had to do was make a decision as to when, what parts were going to get assembled in advance and what parts were going to be permanently attached to that frame, that beautiful steel frame that they made for us at Avalon, and how you were going to proceed. Um, I did appreciate your counsel on you got to get that together because it was the best thing I did because it made it a lot easier for me to start plugging in and working around. But of course, I had this thing on my lap for a long time, so I
Right.
could work on the end of the. And let me tell you, that sucker is 20 plus pounds. It is,
Oh, it's heavier. It's heavier than that. Yeah.
yeah,
The um one of the lessons learned that I wish I had done is I could have stood to go back and crank that nut down a couple of more turns. My ship is starting to work loose a little bit because
so
of that crumple piece
right.
that designed is crumpling a little bit too much.
So I had the same issue, but I think we talked about this. I got a bunch of medium viscosity CA, and
Hmm.
I just poured it all over that nut.
I
And
couldn't get to that nut by the time my
oh,
problem started. My
oh,
problem didn't start until I
could
was,
I was
jockeying the thing around with the bottom of the saucer already on, and that's
I
when
was having that problem from day one. I mean, I just
yeah,
couldn't get it flush. So once I had locked it down, it was solid. It didn't move anymore. But one of the other things I do regret is I feel like we kind of rushed the design of the control panel and how it's attached to the stand. I'm pleased with what we came up with. I think in scale to the model, it's appropriate. I
yeah.
wouldn't have wanted mine any bigger, but I think it could have gone through one more design phase.
Well, there's a natural limitation in trying to put a touchless button and then trying to light it because you're creating the shadow of that button on your. There's just no way to do that and then shine a light behind it without seeing it.
Right.
That
Well,
was
yeah, and going back to instructions, we had no instructions on how to use the touchless buttons. We had to learn how they worked and what they didn't like. I mean, proximity touching, they didn't like to be in proximity to other buttons.
you have to put just even the most minimal of barriers between them, but
Right.
you still had to isolate them.
Yeah.
In retrospect, I mean I see you put yours on the side, I put mine on the front. I've already run into some difficulties reaching under there to hit a button and
Yeah.
go back a chance, to see, but I don't see any better way of doing that because I can't my reasoning was still valid in that I didn't want to, if I put it on the left hand side, that limits how I can display it wherever it ends up going. And
Right.
by putting it on the front, it's it works in more different situations, but it's still not as um, it's still not as clean as being able to bring it out off of the stand and
Right.
put it somewhere. But then all of a sudden, if you're doing that, you're getting into creating a piece of furniture for it, and neither one of us wanted to make the coffee table version.
No, no, but I have one space in the house where I believe Mrs. Spruverse will, well, she'll tolerate it. I don't I I may have you call her and explain why it's okay.
Okay, I'll see what I can do. I
Because
will. I'll plead
because
the case for you.
she's on the fence because of the scale of it. I mean, but it's gonna look beautiful next to my TOS and my refit. So,
I
I've
just hope you've reinforced your floor. Your floor.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, getting it in the house is it's gonna be something. But I'm looking forward to, firing it up and getting it in, pitch black so that you can really see the lighting. That's the
I don't
irony.
want to put mine in pitch black because, and that here's something I regret. I regret not putting it. You see, I had you put the white flat coat or the white primer coat on,
Yeah,
and then your blue primer coat. And
yeah.
I went, ha ha, Phil, I'm just going to skip that white primer coat and go straight into the French blue. And I've got light leaks because I didn't put enough primer coats on my ship.
Oh,
So I wish I had listened to my own self and
yeah.
gone put that a prime, whether it's black or white, primer coat underneath the French blue before I had started with it.
Well, they say, a lot of my subscribers were going, oh, the black, you should have gone silver, you should have gone white on the inside. And, now I know that, there is a slight issue around the underneath of the saucer where it joins. But for me personally, once I saw that it lit up like a Christmas tree, I didn't want little sparkly lights everywhere. So I
Right.
think that black coat really helped to sort of underplay the soft tones that you want coming from the light, from the windows.
Well, the one thing we don't have is not enough lighting.
No.
I mean, you saw what my saucer looked like without the top on it. You could see that from space.
Oh no. It
And
it
then when I put the top on it, I'm actually blackening in windows so that to cut it, to cut some of that down.
yeah,
So
I've
it
actually
wasn't from too much, it wasn't from not enough lighting.
I've been experimenting. I don't know if I will keep it, but I've been experimenting with your black masks over blacking out the windows.
Oh,
I've been and what I like about it is some of my windows I just didn't, as light a touch as I tried to be with my rattle cans, I got a little bit of buildup around them. And so I've got some schmutz in areas that I wish and I did do a pass of scraping them, to try and clean them up. But I noticed when I put your black vinyl down, I got a really nice crisp window again.
that was and doing the edge windows. I really liked how those turned out. That was another regret of mine is not having had any experience with the UV resin.
Yeah,
I wish I had because when you scrape it off and you level off your window and you sander, I left excuse me, I left too much schmutz on my hull and you could see it in some places. I wish I had spent more time sanding that down.
right. Yeah, it was a process to get that down. I did put that in one of my videos. It was definitely, but the trick is with any of these UV resins, especially the paste or the gel, is you gotta make an effort to really clean up after yourself because it
Yeah.
it will show. You might not see it, but once you
You
get
won't see it until you put your first primer coat over color over top of it. And I didn't see it when it was the white hull, but as soon as I put the French blue down, I
yeah.
could see it there. It's like I got too lazy. I should have done a better job with that.
A couple of other things just to complain about, if I might, because I'm feeling better about it, getting it off my chest, is the impulse engines on the saucer. They left us a big old blank space to fill in, which is fine, but that could have been a piece that they
Yeah,
supplied.
I had to use epoxy sculpt to fill mine in.
Yeah, yeah. I used some card and some epoxy sculpt to clean that up, and it's fine. But there was no thought process there. And also with the lighting kit, I don't know what planet they were on thinking that a single bulb was going to be fine for the Bassard collectors and
Right.
collector dish because it wasn't. It would never
No,
work.
they were sad. Those were sadly underpowered or
Yeah.
underlit.
Yeah, but you went a slightly different direction with me on how you designed your impulse engines. You got lovely coverage. I was happy with the coverage I got on mine. I think that you know, when you look at it in person, I got a relatively nice, even uh, sort of coating of light, as it were. But
Yeah, I just used an inch of light strip.
yeah, yeah, much better. And I did not use fiber fill, and I wish I had, just to give it a little more. Did
I
you?
put fiber fill in my warp engines, but that area around behind the blue chiller grills,
Yeah,
but
I did that.
that was the only place I put any.
Oh, you didn't put them in the Bassard collectors.
Didn't put any in the Bassards. Ended up not
Oh,
needing.
I thought you were going to sort of go for that gaseous kind of thing.
Nope, it looks gaseous with the again the not so great vacuum forming of those parts.
Well,
It's
and we obviously we
already
sanded
kind of
those.
cloudy.
Yeah, and I assume you did what I did. We sanded.
Oh, I sanded the heck out of it, but it still kept coming back. There's
Yeah,
some of that was swirling in the plastic.
yeah, yeah. But you know, hey, at the end of the day, I think it is a really, I think it's a really decent representation of a D.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to mistake it for anything else, that's for sure.
No, but I think that one of the other really big issues, I mean, you know, just sort of talking about the painting, you know, for the amount of money we spent on this thing, not even the decency to give us any kind of paint guides or, you know, to show us what reference material they used to produce this kit so that we could all be on the same page.
Yeah,
That was enough.
finding the My Enterprise D website source was a lifesaver.
It was a godsend.
Those photos are, I mean, those are gospel.
Yeah, and a big shout out. Thank you for sharing those with me, Lou, and a big shout out to him for what he did because I we used it an awful lot. But I also will go back and say thank you for your expertise on the paint choices that we made. They really were they blended beautifully, you know, from our French satin base coat to our secondary paint scheme, which was the gingham from Bear, which is it's an amazing paint in and of itself. I think it really was, and of course that lovely color combination, the one part white, one part white, one part blue.
One part light blue, two parts white.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The teeth aren't working, which gave us that third accent, and the beautiful.
Really helped. I mean, it helped me a lot with my lifeboat placement. It helped me a lot with just where my grid line should be.
Right.
You'll notice if you look at that and look at the original blueprints, the windows on this one are a whole lot more accurate than the original blueprint windows.
Yeah.
Um, there are some things we could not work around. And I think that you and I got results sometimes in spite of the model, not because of the model.
Yeah.
And there were one of the things we could not work around was where Helios put the windows.
No.
We
No.
couldn't. There's nothing we could do about it. We could block them in, but
Yeah.
we're not going to drill out new ones.
No.
And
You couldn't
the
do that.
the blatant error of putting the rim of windows along the secondary hull uh, equator instead of letting us put more of those windows like are on the edge of the rim of the saucer. That was an unforced error. I mean,
Yeah.
they didn't have to make that mistake. They chose to make that mistake.
Well, and then while we're on the subject, well, missing the portholes, they missed the round portholes completely,
Right.
and they really came up short on the rear photon torpedo housing.
Photon torpedo housing was no
Yeah.
good. The
No.
the again, this goes into the what they should have done on the saucer, but the fact that they didn't put any of the engraved grid lines on the secondary hull, particularly on the neck, really made it difficult to see where the windows line up against, the various levels of the neck.
Yeah.
All of that detail that should have been there that wasn't.
Well, well, I really appreciate the fact that you sort of, you went ahead and you test fit everything for me and then showed me the way so that I did not get lost. I mean, I did call a couple of times panicking because I couldn't find things because they were right in front of me. And, when
Yeah.
you don't mix rocket fuel in your tub at night, you don't think about turning a page over to see if
Turning
there's instructions on the other side, and you
whole
don't
new world.
see
It's a
things
whole
that,
new world on the other side.
yeah,
Uh, I granted the pinning of the pinning of the nacelles to the pylons. There was none. You had anything you needed, you had to create for yourself. I am still, who knows, 2 or 3 years down the road, the material that they've printed these out of, are we going to get in the cell droop? Or are we not?
yeah. There is no, yeah, that's a very important point.
There's no history on that product yet that we could say that, just because today our nacelles are nice and level, are they going to
Yeah.
stay that way?
Now, what was I'm embarrassed to say I forget the name of the gentleman we met in Milton Keynes at the Sci-Fi Museum that we had lunch with, who's working
Wayne,
Wayne.
Wayne.
Wayne. He did say, and I believe he lives in Singapore.
Oh,
Uh,
that's Lee you're talking about.
Lee, he was the one who said to me that because I was telling him about where these came from and how they were produced, and he apparently knows of that because he said he had several models that in Singaporean weather, and I guess I don't know if he has climate control, they've warped and they've drooped.
Yeah. I mean, there's a history with styrene. You know how strong styrene is. You know
Yeah,
how to treat it, what to look out for.
right.
There are so many different types of resins, so many different formulations of resins, both FDM and liquid, that there's just not enough a case study
No,
to see what the longevity on some of these things are. So, you know, I have rather seen the entire sled done as a metal piece with, a skin over top of it. Boy, howdy, would I. But would
yeah.
that have added another $300 or $400 to the price? Probably.
Yeah, but I mean, when you're at that price already, for me, it had I have, and again, this is going back to what you said, because I mean, I was getting it the few times that Daniel actually jumped on a Zoom call with me.
Mhm.
All I got was, I mean, and no apologies or no excuses. It was just, oh yes, it was, it was the first run. If you got the first run, you got basically you got screwed. And oh, I fixed it in the second run. The third run's going to be amazing. And wait till you see
Yeah,
the E because all of the mistakes I made on the D, oh, I fixed them in the E. That's fine. But I think at this price level, when you're trying to do these kinds of things, you need to get it right. And I think you need to up your game in terms of how you present it and give us a lot more thought process to enriching our experience with you showing us that you took the trouble to really drill down and
yeah.
really do your
If
homework.
this if this was in fact their first product for the home audience, for the consumer, they should have been on the lookout for input.
Yeah,
They should have been looking out for, I'm not saying they should have, thrown kits out to builders and say, build this for us and give us your notes.
right.
But they should have been a lot more receptive to honest criticism and honest suggestions than I think they were.
Yeah, I agree, but again, it was a remarkable revelation to learn that he had not taken a finished kit that he was shipping and built it
Yeah.
before he sent them out.
They trusted the fact that they had built the 6 foot ones, and these weren't anything different except they were half the size.
Right.
Yeah.
But getting back to that pylon quickly, I did get a minor crack in my port side pylon when I was attaching my pins to my to the pylons, the
Uh-huh.
lower part of the nacelle. Basically, at first, my first go around, I thought I was going to get clever and I was going to literally use screws. And
Right.
he was going to screw because that's what he told me to do. He said, just use screws. Well, I used the screw and I didn't get the hole centered correctly. And
Uh-huh.
I cracked, I got a minor crack in it. Now I cleaned it up and it disappeared, but I stopped on the screw concept and I drilled down, but then I used rod. I used copper rod as for my pins, for my locator pins.
I ended up using flat brass stock
Right.
than pins because there was already a slot in the pylon.
All right.
So I just slotted a piece of brass there and just cut a slit in the nacelle to match it. And
Right.
I used that as rather than using a round pin, I used a flat piece of,
Right.
something that was about 1/4 inch wide and, 2 or 3 mil thick, and slid that down there and used that just to stabilize the joint.
Right.
Well,
Well,
has this gotten too self-indulgent here,
no,
or
well, we've done a complete hour, and I think that is quite an autopsy. Do you want to just give some final thoughts before we close?
yes, go ahead.
Well, well, I'm thrilled I went on this journey. It was when you reached out to me and said, "Hey, this thing is on the market," and I got all excited and I jumped in, and I'm glad I did.
And
I
that's why I felt immediately responsible for the housekeeping. Because
I
I was directed to it by others, and others who said nicer things about Helios than you and I certainly would.
right.
And um, I saw this as a wonderful opportunity and a big chunk of change, and I felt that I owed it to you not to leave you in as in the dark as the rest of us
No,
were.
and I was cunning enough to cajole you into coming out here
Oh,
and
you don't have to. You don't have to
spending your
do that.
vacation working.
You don't have to do that. All you got to do is say, there's a light on in the at the sequel mansion, and I'll be there.
Oh, well, you're always welcome, but I was so grateful for the amount of you really you advanced the cause over here because I had all my windows were masked.
Well, there's certainly there, and I'm not going to blow my own horn here, but when it goes back to things you need for this kit, you need a set of painting masks for this kit. You
Yeah,
need window masks for this kit.
yeah,
You need a decent stand for this kit.
yeah,
You need um, you need that UV resin for this kit. Uh, you need a lot of room for this kit. You need a lot of patience for this kit.
yeah,
It's not your typical resin kit where there's a lot of cleanup of the parts, but there's a lot of stuff you got to come up with your own solution because you're basically thrown into the wilderness with a dull butter knife and expected to carve, Mount Rushmore with it.
yeah.
It is
No,
it is not for the faint of heart.
no, I will say though that I definitely have an awful lot more confidence now in my building skills than I did when I started. I won't be tackling something like this anytime soon, although I do have a couple of more studio scale things out there, but maybe a year or two before I get back to something like this. But I'm really grateful for the opportunity, and I will say that and I'm sure there's a lot of our subscribers out there and friends out there who have their own groups that they share information with and share whether it's printing or printers or whatever they're doing. Um, and that part of community is, I love it. I just love the community and I love the camaraderie. And I'm going to embarrass you by saying thank you for your kindness, your leadership, and your willingness to share. Because no, seriously, without your guidance, this would not be finished, Lou. So
Well, let's
thank
talk
you.
about the cast of characters because good ideas come from everywhere. I'll
Yeah,
thank Andrew for the idea of cutting out the entire ring where the
yeah,
phaser goes.
yeah. No,
Uh, and
Andrew Bernard.
thank you for turning me on to the Proxon jigsaw to do that. We didn't do it necessarily the same way he did it, but the idea of that needing to be done
Yeah,
was an important step.
yeah.
Certainly, when it comes down to panic calls in the middle of the night, you have to talk to Jeffrey Fink, and you have to
You gotta
talk to
love that man. I mean, he comes through every time. You gotta
well,
love
the amount of bacon that he saved for me on those impulse housings that I didn't end up needing.
him.
But things like the decals that now I got some artwork from Rick Sternbach. He
Yeah,
he asked me not to publicize that too much, but I did. Um, I got some artwork from him. I redrew a lot of it. I created the lifeboats, things like that, and then handed that over to Keith to print it. So nobody walks through this world alone.
no,
All of these things happen because of different people putting their best skills in. Phil came up with that wonderful LCARS panel.
well,
He found, he went out and found Taylor at the Metalworks company.
the
I
six.
wouldn't have known where to even start on something
Well,
like that.
I would say six other metal companies just ghosted me. They just wouldn't even return my calls.
Yeah, but even if I had the brains to figure out that I needed to do it, I'd have called one, gotten one rejection, and stopped.
Oh, well, it was great. But listen, I'm glad you were here so that you guys could talk about what that frame should, because he needed some guidance, but he did come through for us.
Came through excellently.
Yeah, he did. And he did a great job on the control panels, and it serves its purpose. And I'm thrilled that we went with something as over-engineered. And I don't believe it really is
Oh,
over-engineered.
I don't think it's over-engineered at all.
No, I think
Not when
it's
you
exactly
consider
what
the weight
it
of
needed.
that ship.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just it's what it needed. And anything less would have been a mitigated disaster.
It
So
would be anything less, it would already be drooping like this. I
yeah,
mean, you needed heavy gauge steel in that base.
yeah, yeah.
And the fact that you can make it look so elegant and and delicate as it is.
Well, I
Uh,
have a feeling we'll be going back to him, Lou, because he has the ability to cut metal with water jets,
yeah,
through steel. And he talked to me a little bit about some of the things he wanted to try and do for us. But maybe, in the future, whatever we do, we'll do. Obviously, there'll be another Trek adventure. But we can think about a base in the form of a delta shield. We can, in the form
yeah,
of whatever. We'll go back to him, and we'll come up with something else, because I know even if it's on a smaller scale, we can do some things with him, and not just there. His skills, his printing skills, his CAD file skills. He can program Arduinos for us. So
yeah.
who knows what we'll come up with in the future that we'll take advantage of that skill, because he's got untapped talent.
Yeah, for people who think that model makers do nothing but sit and hunch over top of their table and don't talk to anybody and don't communicate with the outside world and don't socialize, this puts that to rest because
Yeah,
it is it's a community effort.
it is, and it's great to have friends. And for all of you out there watching this this sort of recap, you know, really be grateful for community. And if you don't, reach out to a local IPMS group or find out from your local hobby shop if they have a group that you can join. And even if you can't make it every week or every month that they meet, make an effort to go out there and you'll make some new friends. I promise you, you will not regret it. It is really worth it.
Come to a model show.
Come to a model show.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'll feel better for it. Well, I think we'll end it there.
So there you go. It was fun, right? Very interesting to sort of hear and sort of reminisce about all of the various different details that we went through. So a lot of fun. Well, that is really the wrap on this build. But as I did mention earlier, there are a few tweaks I'm making. I've reduced the amount of light from the windows, and I've done some other tweakies as well. But maybe I will come back and we'll review that at another point in time. I'm not sure, because I have a couple more to do. I have a G that I would like to build at some point. And of course, there are several other ships in the fleet that need to get built, and we will definitely be tackling a lot of those on the channel in 25 and beyond. But hey, that's it for this rather unique episode of Sprueverse. I hope all of you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I know Lou did, creating this awesome piece of Star Trek history. Hey, if you want to get a hold of me, I'm sprueverse@gmail.com, and as you know, I post most days my in the weeds, what's going on the bench, at Sprueverse on Instagram. And on my channel page, you can buy me a cup of coffee. That's for my charitable builds, which I try to get to once or twice a year. I do that for those who are less fortunate and not able to build anymore. It makes us all feel good, right? So, hey, as always, I wish all of you, please, be safe, be well, build something, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Be well.